Hey everybody, welcome back to the K2N Online Paddle School. We are back here on YouTube with another episode of the K2N vlog. This week we have some exciting footage of downwinding here in Florida. We're on the Gulf Coast. This is only the third time that I'm able to downwind this season. The wind has been very sporadic in a not beneficial way for downwinding. We don't have enough wind for long enough, and it's a little atypical to years past. The last time I went downwinding, if you guys remember that vlog episode, I got beat up by a rogue wave. So this is gonna be in the same section of the Gulf, but we're starting and ending the course backwards. And the south wind is a bit more conducive to waves that are a little larger, and they're a little less aggressive, I should say, comparatively to last time. So all that footage is there at the end. I'm gonna do a voiceover and some commentary. I will try to pause the video and draw some lines on the actual footage so you guys can see some of the high points, low points, and see some of the timing that goes into catching the waves as well as surfing them and connecting them into other runs. I do make a bunch of mistakes during this downwind run as well, where my timing is off and I have to super muscle it, or I have to hit the brakes and wait for the next swell to catch. But hopefully that's educational for you guys as well as fun to watch. So one thing that I wanted to mention is on Saturday I picked up a canoe for one of my club members, and it is a pretty distinctive looking boat. It is a Mike Giblin Hurricane, so it's an OC1. It's white and it has flowers painted on the top. The boat had been sitting outside for an undetermined amount of time, so it looked pretty worn for the most part. So I spent most of Saturday cleaning and buffing that and getting that back to a shine. You'll see that here. And one thing I noticed when looking at spare parts on the Ozone website is that this boat is actually featured in one of the product images for Hurricane deck pad replacements. So kind of interesting. If you know this canoe or you're familiar with it, if you can give me a little bit of insight on its history, it may have just been a submitted image based on replacing it because of its overall age being pretty old. But it's another canoe that we have here in Citrus County. I always love when our club members go from not owning their own boat to getting their first vessel. It allows them the opportunity to go on the water more dynamically, more frequently, working on their training, and overall just enjoying paddling a little bit more. So being able to facilitate the transaction of getting the boat from here, cleaning it up for them, and making it a little bit more presentable, that's what it's all about running a club here. So just like a few weeks ago, this week I have a few Canadian paddlers that are visiting in the area for lessons, and I've been doing a bunch of lessons here and there in Hernando. And I wanted to talk about some of the coaching ideas that I use as a strategy in order to interact with people in a very positive way. Coaching is a skill no different than the paddle technique we're trying to learn, right? Learning to hone your ability to communicate, demonstrate, and convey ideas is something that you have to be scrutinizing of how you say things and how you present things and trying to make adjustments, right? Could I have said that better? If somebody doesn't understand it, can I rephrase it? Is there another way that I can understand the idea in order to convey it a little bit more clearly or in a way that is more palatable? One of the worst possible ways to convey information is to make it black and white. You are wrong and I am right. You automatically create this standoff where the other person has to relinquish so many different ideas by being wrong. There's a lot of emotional links that people have when they're learning. They learn it from somebody they look up to and they respect or is a valued friend. And the idea of that person being wrong or being shined in a poor light now makes the person defensive. And so now you're no longer discussing the topic at hand. You're now fighting ideologies that you don't even comprehend. And so one of my strategies that I've been honing over the years is being accepting when somebody does something incorrectly because they are just working with an incomplete amount of information. When we're working with somebody that needs more pieces to the puzzle to put the image together that they're really looking for, we want to just add these puzzle pieces. We just want to add on to what they're doing. And most people are willing to add to things that they already have. I already have all these skills and I want to add to them. The idea of being wrong means I have to remove all these ideas and start over completely. And again, this is something people don't want to do. And so looking at movement and trying your best to look at what somebody is good at and add pieces to the puzzle, right? Try to do this, try to add this to your arsenal, try to make this a little bit better. You already move this much, but can we add this much much more movement and get a big benefit out of it. Even if the information you're conveying is totally correct, right? If you don't package it in a way that people want to absorb, then they're always going to be defensive at the prospect. And I'm lucky because when people make the journey all the way here to Hernando, they're already open-minded. They have already made the decision and have gone through enough steps that they are an open book. They are a sponge that is ready to absorb information. But even in these scenarios, you don't want to make it combative, right? You want them to feel like the ideas that they have given them some progress. And now it is up to you to add on to these ideas, right? So we're always adding to it. Adhering to any extreme is bad. If it's black or if it's white, we're on two polar ends of the spectrum, right? And the ideas that we want are always going to be a little bit gray. There's a specific shade of gray that we want, and if it's a little too dark, we can add some of the white to it. And if it's a little bit too light, we can add some of the black to it, but it's always going to be somewhere in the middle. Conveying these spectrums and conveying these polar extremes helps people relinquish some of the ideas they hold on to very dearly. With the canoe stroke, for example, you have a balance of leaning forward and you have a balance of rotating. And there are two extremes to these. There are people that only hinge forward, and there are people that only sit up and rotate. And in the outrigger canoe specifically, we want to try to get the best of both of these worlds. So if you're hinging forward, we can add rotation to this and get you closer to the middle of the spectrum and maximize both. And if you already rotate in a very dynamic way, now we can get you to try to lean forward and get a little bit more out of your rotation. And again, we're trying to bring these ideas together. But if somebody can understand that they're on one side of the extreme and then there's somebody that exists on the other side of the extreme, they become a little bit more empathetic. We're like, oh, okay, I understand that you can be successful here and here, but the largest success is somewhere in the middle, right? Having these little bit of compromises is a really good thing to try and convey with people. It's not about absolutes. It's not about being right or wrong. It's just about helping, right? We just want to keep adding on to these ideas. So if you're a coach or you're just trying to help out a friend, think about the way that you're trying to share this information, and the person that you're trying to help will be a lot more responsive if you approach it with compassion and empathy and trying to help. I'm right, you're wrong, that doesn't work, whoever taught you that's a fool. All of these things are super negative, and you're instantly going to get somebody that doesn't want to listen to anything else you're saying, even if it is correct. This is one of the joys. I always like honing skills, right? And one of them is coaching, right? Being able to take in this information and convey it for people in a very concise and efficient way is something I find a lot of joy in. When people come down and they learn to use their legs and truly learn how to use their hips in the motion, it is a huge wow moment. Oh my gosh, I've never really used my legs while paddling before. This changes everything. And it's cool that we can do that so quickly, and it's on the backbone of all of these optimizations to my coaching skills over the years. If in the past I just was steadfast and like, well, I'm the ultimate coach and I'm perfect at it, and I never learned, you guys would not have a very good product. This YouTube channel would not be very large because I wasn't quite as good as I could have been back then. Only by slowly adding on to it and putting more thought into it has made it more refined. And that being said, I hope 5 years from now I look back and kind of cringe at like, oh man, like that was not as good as it could have been, right? Because I want to always keep making that progress forward as a coach. And all this is only possible through the YouTube channel, people being aware of us here in Hernando, flying down and making the pilgrimage and spending the time out here on the lake. It's really awesome. It's a really cool feeling to be able to do what I'm doing now. In the personal training sphere, to have people travel from afar to find you and work with you, you would literally have to be a celebrity, right? So being able to do a very similar thing within the paddling world, it's really cool, right? It's something I would have never imagined would materialize over all these years. So I have to do my due diligence and making sure that I'm constantly getting better for all of you guys. Thank you all so much for checking out the video. If there's any topics or ideas that you would want to add on to what we're talking about today, feel free to leave a comment. I hope you all enjoy the downwind footage. Again, it's only in Florida, so it's not as cool as some of the footage around the world, but we work with what we got, and it's always on a spectrum. Some people, they look at the 4-foot waves and they're like, man, I would crap my pants out there. And other people look at that and they're like, brah, it's 4 foot with 0 wind over here. And I get it, right? But for us, this is one of the cool things that we can get, right? And we're just trying to showcase the environment that we have to work with. Please enjoy the footage, and we'll see you all next week for the next K2N vlog episode. All right, everybody, welcome to Indian Rocks Beach in the Tampa area. Actually, we're near St. Petersburg. So we start in Indian Rocks Beach and we go north on the south wind runs into Hurricane Pass, which is right outside of Dunedin, Florida. We go out of the beach here to start. Because it's a south wind, there's a very small ground shore break, and it's very easy to get out in, as you can see here, which is really nice. On really windy days, sometimes that shore break is just a monster to get through. So it's easy to get out. And when we finish at Hurricane Pass, there's a pass to go through, so we don't have to deal with the beach anymore. So this is us right at the start paddling together. I'm out here with my buddy Chad. He's in the surf ski. He's in a kind of an intermediate / advanced surf ski, the Think Ion. And then I'm in an Ari's canoe, the same one that I refurbished a few episodes ago. And this is right at the start. You can see he kind of misses a swell there, and I catch this swell. But then I go forward and I miss this swell, and he's zipped behind me. He finds the next wave, and we're going to use this as an example of surfing. His tail is going up, the nose is going down, and he's kind of like sliding down this makeshift hill, right? So the waves present high points and low points, and you climb up those high points. Right here, you can see my nose is facing up, and I'm pushing into the back of this wave face here. As I create enough force to catch the wave, my nose starts to go down, and I'm kind of like sliding down the hill here. You can see I stop paddling, the nose is facing down, and I start rocketing forward. So on these downwind runs, when you stop paddling, you should be going the fastest. As we're going through, there's high points and low points and waves that go back and forth. You can see he catches a wave and I miss one, and he flies ahead. Look at that. He's like 50 meters, 100 meters ahead of me immediately. And that's the fun part about downwinding, is it's like a game of leapfrog, where I've caught a wave here and I push it into another wave. You can see that high point in front of me. I stop paddling. I kind of slide down this little hill, looking left and right, looking for the next swell. And right here, there's another swell. I don't even have to paddle to catch it. The momentum pushes you swell to swell if you can time it right. So he was super far ahead of me. I caught 4 or 5 swells in my favor, and I'm right back behind him again. And so this is the fun part about downwinding, is you have to paddle, make decisions, steer, navigate, read the water, and use all this to your advantage in order to keep up with people and go fast. Having fun out there is simply just catching waves, but trying to put the pieces together and be efficient, be fast, right? There's a lot going on. So you can see him, the tail goes up, the nose goes down. The surf ski is super efficient in catching swells, no ama to push through the waves, 2 blades for a really high stroke rate. So watching him from the side gives you a nice visual of these high points and low points, pushing the boat through it, seeing the momentum that you're gonna gain from these swells, and then converting it into the next swell and the next swell. And if you do it very well, you can paddle at a moderate rate and catch a lot of different swells as you push through. So right here, I catch a swell. I have a water drop right on the nose, so it's very hard to see the nose interact with the water. The Ari's is a really nice canoe for this type of environment. It has a little bit more rocker and volume comparatively to the Draco, for example. I've taken the Draco out here and had a blast, but with this, you don't have to really work the volume so much. So the rocker is kind of the banana shape where the nose and the tail come up. As you're surfing, the nose is going to drop down, and it's up to you to lean back in a lot of situations like a bobsled in order to keep the nose from going underwater and to keep the rudder in the water. And so with a boat like the Draco, when it's low volume, you have to constantly shift your weight around to make sure that the low volume nose that's efficient for pushing in flat water doesn't go completely submarine mode underwater. With the Ari's, it has built-in features that prevent you from having to do this. So you can immediately just sit up, catch the swell, and you don't have to manipulate your body weight so much in order to catch and run these swells so efficiently. So Chad starts getting ahead of me. I have edited this to make it seem like that I'm near him, but I'm just using the footage when he is in sight of me. And he definitely was the faster craft out there, probably about 30 seconds per mile. After 10 miles, you know, it's like 5 minutes, right? So I mean, he was just super, super far ahead of me. But yep, this is just another right here pushing into the swells and looking for, you know, the opportunities to push and rest and then convert them into more surfing opportunities without working so hard. I'm no master of downwinding or anything like that, but being able to read the water and time the pushes, I'm relatively knowledgeable in order to do it in a competent way. Having good technique and fitness allows you to make more mistakes and push through them without being punished, but more time in these environments allows you to kind of see the future when it comes to the swells and how you can convert those ideas into, you know, more efficient surfing moments. So right here we have the swell from behind us. So you can see the swell picks up and it kind of lifts your tail and pushes you forward, right? And it's all about the timing of having enough energy. If you don't push hard enough at the right time, you don't initiate the physics to start the surfing process. So if you're out there and you're not a very strong paddler, you're not strong enough to catch swells, and so it's not a lot of fun, right? You need to have a prerequisite fitness base and technique base to do this. So this is timing a swell incorrectly. You can see I take a bunch of strokes, I'm really fighting the swell, and I finally pop over it. Had I just paddled a little sooner, I would have been able to get on that wave with no effort instead of trying to muscle through it. So with this one, there's a giant wave in front of me, and instead of pushing onto that wave, I'm going to wait for the wave that's right behind it. So the next wave is great. You can see it building right here, waiting for it to get in front of me. Then I push, and this is one of the biggest waves of the day. This one is about a little over 3 feet for swell. And so you can see the wave break on my right side there, and this is the same wave from my head cam. And you can see this is what you can't even see land for a moment. And you're normally supposed to surf these at an angle, but I heard that breaking wave and I was terrified that the wave was going to break over the top of me and flip me out of the canoe. So I just ran the canoe straight. So we turn around here for a moment and you can see the swells as we go into them. So this gives you a better idea and a feel of how big these swells are and how much they affect the canoe in general, right? So right here, here's one of the big swells that we would be surfing, and you can see how much it jars the boat around as we go back into this upwind section. But yeah, this is just gives you a feel of, so when we're surfing in one direction, they seem very small, but when we go in this way, you know, they're much larger. At this point, after we stop, we end up restarting again, and I kind of jet ahead, and again in the footage it makes me look like I'm a superstar ahead of Chad here, but again in reality he stopped completely and gave me a chance to start paddling. So this is about 4 minutes here of just unbroken footage, and you know, it's just a really good section of this run. So once we restarted, I was able to get back up to speed very quickly and be pretty efficient immediately. And even there, I had turned off my watch and I turned it back on as we go through here. And I'm like, man, I just caught 4 waves in a row and I didn't get that credited to my overall speeds. But looking at the swells, if you're not familiar with downwinding, when you look at the water here, it probably doesn't make any sense on what we're doing or why we're doing it. But if you're, you know, in tune with surfing, understanding waves, right? You can see some of the wave faces in front of us presenting themselves, and again, the timing that goes into seeing these swells and pushing into them. So right here, here's a big swell. I start pushing early. I'm on the wave face, flying the ama, having a good time, trying to convert this to the next one, right? I'm looking to the right. I see a couple swells. Sometimes you miss them. Right here, I miss it. I wait for the one behind it to develop. Start pushing into that one, and there it is, right? A lot of times it's okay to just wait a second for the next swell. You lose a lot of boat speed, but then you're gonna go 10 miles an hour again, so it's always worth the second wait instead of constantly pushing and trying to muscle through these waves. So here's another big section here, right? And it's all about looking around and converting it, right? You can see this swell developing a little while ago, and so everything kind of directs towards it, right? I'm gonna catch all these swells, I'm gonna use this momentum, and you just have to put yourself in position to maximize these situations. So with wave faces, again, these big swells that we're looking at, these are, you know, 3 to 4 feet as we're out here. And it's always comical when people mention wave sizes, like, oh man, I was out on my lake and it was 2 foot tall. And most of the time, the person that's referencing that, it's like 6 inches of wind chop, and they don't understand what 2 feet is, right? So when you're in the seated position, if you have waves that are 3 or 4 feet tall, they are almost eye level or slightly over your head when you're in the seated position. So if you don't have swells that you look up at any point, then you're not really in 3 or 4 foot swells. It doesn't sound like a number that's very impressive, right? 3 feet isn't a lot in most contexts, but when it comes to waves, like 3 feet waves are like pretty big. Like it's enough to blow up your boat. It's enough to get separated from your boat. It's enough to fall out in hoolie. It's enough to challenge your balance in the ocean. So, you know, people will exaggerate it, but I'm more on the end of like underestimating the size of the waves. So 5 or 6 foot waves in this context would be overhead or almost double overhead, which would be just super gigantic for what I'm used to. You can start seeing some of the swells and how they're developing behind me here. And it's like there's millions of little hills that rise and fall, and it's your opportunity to get on these hills and kind of slide down them, right? It's like going sledding, except instead of climbing up a giant mountain each time you go sledding or skiing, you're able to just take 5 paddle strokes and you get that 15 seconds of a thrill. So I'm still ahead of Chad here, and he's making his move. I am pushing really hard here as well for context. So my heart rate is closer to max effort, and I saw his heart rate monitor at the end at like 140, and I don't think my heart rate was that low at any point except for when we stopped. So like I said, I knew that I got the jump on him, and I really wanted to push, catch a lot of these swells, get some footage of the two of us in frame more than anything. It's not really about racing and winning, but if I'm ahead of him, I have this camera and I can get, him in the shot, and that makes it a little bit more fun. But yep, the culmination of every skill that you ever learned. So when you're thinking about reaching and hip rotation and all of these ideas, this is where you can put it into practice and really unlock the true ability of your canoe and your overall skill set with Mother Nature, right? It's a really cool, exhilarating feeling to test your abilities and put every skill that you have in your arsenal to the test, right? Balance, fitness, technique, reading the water, understanding your environment. Excellent. Thank you guys so much for checking out the video. If there's anything else you'd like to see, please leave a comment below.